Hello everyone, today we're going to discover a new story from Greek mythology that's about love and adventure, and it's entitled Cupid and Psyche. For our introduction, Hamilton derives this story from the Latin writer Appius, who, like Ovid, was interested in making elegant, humorous tales. A style that could not be further from the religious, fearsome tales of Hesiod's Grecian. Appealing to the Romans' aesthetic sense, the heroine of Appius is Psyche, a princess so stunning that people start worshipping her rather than Venus, the Latin name for Aphrodite. Insulted, Venus is sending her son, Cupid, or the Latin name for Eros, to make Psyche fall in love with the world's ugliest man. Yet Cupid falls in love with her and somehow stops someone else from doing so. Apollo persuades Psyche's father to leave her atop a hill to marry a monster. And here are the objectives. At the end of the discussion, students will be able to recognize microcosms in celebrated Greek and Roman love stories, define the meaning of hero in mythology, identify motives of the characters from the text, illustrate the relationship of love to the discovery and awareness of oneself, formulate personal concepts and perceptions of love, and acknowledge the reflection of not just our own deepest hopes and fears, but also those of people from the earliest times. I guess all of you are now ready to hear the story, so let's get started. The Cupid and Psyche story is also used as an allegory to the quest for love and happiness of every human being. The trials faced by Psyche reflect the struggles we all face in life. Let's talk about the characters of the story. Psyche. The fantastically beautiful Psyche is the Greco-Roman goddess of the soul. She is often shown as having butterfly wings, which makes a lot of sense since her name not only means soul in Greek but also butterfly. We're guessing her butterfly wings were probably totally necessary to keep up with her famous winged husband, Cupid, also known as Eros, god of love and desire. Together, this high-flying couple were said to have parented a daughter named Voluptas or Hedone, the goddess of pleasure. Cupid, also known as Eros. When Cupid, the god of love and desire, usually turns up in a plot, he wreaks havoc by making others fall in love. The mischievous little god is renowned for its magic passion-inducing arrows causing loves of trouble. However, we see the tables turned in the story of Cupid and Psyche. It is the life of Cupid that is turned upside down when he stings his own arrow, causing himself to fall in love with the stunningly beautiful mortal female, Psyche. Venus, also known as Aphrodite. Venus, known by the Greeks as Aphrodite, may be the goddess of beauty and love, but in the story of Cupid and Psyche, she becomes ugly and hateful. When men begin worshipping the beautiful mortal princess Psyche, the jealous Venus is sent to torment the girl by her son Cupid. Nevertheless, the tables are turned on Venus as Cupid falls in love with Psyche himself. The only thing that Venus needs is a stunning daughter-in-law. And for the setting of the story, we have the mortal world, Cupid's palace, the underworld, and Mount Olympus. And now let's have the exciting part, the journey of Psyche. So here we're going to use the framework of the hero's journey. The hero's journey is a framework that was developed by scholar Joseph Campbell with many myths and stories to follow. It's a useful way for many storytellers and story readers to look at the tale. Stage 1, the ordinary world. When Venus rises up and is jealous of the beauty of the mortal female, Psyche is living her life in normal world. Venus makes sure no mortal man wants to get married to Psyche. So, in the story, Psyche is just really beautiful to the point that all people wanted to see her just to worship her. And that made Venus super envious to the point that she came up with an evil plan. So what she did was she asked her son Cupid to strike Psyche with an arrow and make her fall in love with an ugly monster. And following the command of his mother, he entered Psyche's room while she was asleep. And when he was already about to strike her with his arrow, he suddenly stopped because he realized that Psyche was indeed beautiful. And with all of a sudden, he accidentally pricked himself with his own arrow. And as the result, he was the one who was affected by his own magic. He was the one who fell in love with Psyche. Stage 2, the call to adventure. Psyche's call to adventure arrives as her family discovers the secret of marrying a beast. They put her on the top of the mountains waiting for the beast, and her adventures started. The western winds, the fear, sweeps Psyche off to the mansion of Cupid to be his wife. Psyche doesn't know her husband's name exactly because she can even see him by sight. So here's what happened. When Psyche's father went to the Oracle of Delphi to ask about her daughter's fate, Apollo replied that Psyche was destined to marry an ugly monster. And at first, when Psyche's father discovered that, of course, he was shocked, but he had no choice but to accept it. So that's what they did. They brought her on the top of the mountain. So by the time that they already reached the top of the mountain, everyone already gave their sad farewell to Psyche and they already left her alone there. And after that, Psyche just sadly waited for her destined husband. But with all of a sudden, Zephyr, the god of the wind, arrived and he carried her and they flew towards their destination. So Zephyr brought Psyche to a palace that floats in the cloud, and as she entered it, she was so amazed by how beautiful it was. And she also felt like she was a real princess because she was served by this invisible servant inside the palace. Stage 3, Refusal of the Call. Though it might seem like Psyche is living the decent life in the lap of extravagance, she's lonesome. She's starting to have doubts about her spouse, and she isn't completely glad. So while Psyche is inside the palace, she always hears the voice of her invisible husband. At first, she was so happy about everything, but as time passed, she realized that having that kind of life is a little sad because, yes, she has everything she needs. She has a loving husband, but she's still not completely happy because she can't even see him. Stage 4, Meeting with a Mentor. Psyche has two counselors, but they're bad ones. Her sisters advise Psyche to spy on her husband by lamplight to find out if he's an awful monster. So, when Psyche invited her two sisters to visit the palace, they felt super envious because Psyche was living the luxurious life that they've always wanted. So what they did was, they poisoned Psyche's heart and mind. They made Psyche doubt about the real appearance of her husband. And they told her, what if he's only keeping himself invisible because he's trying to hide his monstrous face? So, as their advice, they told Psyche to visit his room while he's asleep and stab him with a knife if she ever confirms that her husband is really a monster. Stage 5, Crossing of the Threshold. Psyche agrees to take their advice and takes a look at her husband as she sleeps. For our heroine, this is the point of no return. It turns out that the great god Cupid is her hubby, not a beast at all. He wakes up and catches the red-handed Psyche. He is angry about her deceit and leaves her. So Psyche got persuaded by her two sisters' advice, so she dared to enter the room of Cupid while he was asleep. And when she tried to get the lamp closer to Cupid's face, she realized that Cupid is not really a monster. In fact, he's a very gorgeous man. And with all of a sudden, the oil of the lamp fell on Cupid's skin, and that made him awake. And after seeing Psyche holding a knife, that really gave him so much pain because it's a huge sign of betrayal. And because of that, he left the room alone, and he was really uh, hurt by that betrayal of Psyche. So Psyche begged Cupid not to go, but because of the extreme pain that he felt, he just decided to leave her alone. Stage 6. Test allies and enemies. Psyche wants Cupid back bad. Psyche is feeling terrible for Cupid back. She goes to the jealous Venus, who pressures Psyche to perform all manner of seemingly impossible tasks to prove worthy of Cupid. So, one way for Psyche to have Cupid back is to convince his mother. So that's what Psyche did. So while Psyche was kneeling and begging in front of Venus, Cupid was also there, secretly watching. So in order to prove that Psyche is really worthy of Cupid's love, Venus gives her super hard challenges. So here's the first one. So Venus takes Psyche in a storehouse and demands her to sort the piles of grains that lie there. So she must accomplish it before the evening comes. So while Psyche stares in despair at the task ahead of her, the ants appeared and sort the grains. So one by one, they arrange it, and when Venus returns, she becomes very furious because Psyche is successful in this first challenge with the help of the ants. So, for the second challenge, Psyche must collect the legendary golden fleece from the dangerous ship grazing by a river. Psyche obediently goes to the riverside, and the compassionate river god gives her instructions to accomplish the task. And because of that, she comes back to Venus with her arms full of golden fleece. For the third challenge, Psyche must collect water from the source river Styx, which leads to the underworld. Knowing that this task is super tough, Psyche is already in the verge of giving up. But Zeus pities her and sends his eagle to help her with the task. So, as she comes back to Venus, the goddess already gets the hint that she receives help from the gods. Stage 7. Approach to the inmost cave. The last and most difficult task that Psyche will endure is to meet Persephone in the underworld, to get a box full of some of the elegance of Persephone and bring it back to Venus and the living world. Psyche is confident that this is the end of the road. She is getting ready to kill herself and head into the underworld. Luckily, she is hearing a voice asking her how to get to the afterlife alive. As it turns out, the entrance is through a cave, which is very convenient given the stage's name. Stage 8. Ordeal. Psyche's ordeal is going to the realm of the dead, past Charon the ferryman and Cerberus. Finally, she sees Persephone and makes her appeal. So the voice tells her the instruction of how to get there alive. So for the first step, she must put a coin in her mouth for Charon, the underworld ferryman, to bring her across the river. And the voice also instructs her to give some honey cakes to Cerberus, the three-headed dog that guards the gates of the underworld. So as she hands the cakes to the dog, it falls asleep right away, which allows her to safely pass by. Stage 9. Reward. Psyche is triumphant in obtaining a box of Persephone's beauty. Now, she can go back to Venus, hand her the box, and get Cupid back. So, as Psyche finally finds Persephone face to face in the underworld, she tells the queen that she ventures all the way there just to have her love back, and that box is the only key for her to do that. And because of that, it is eventually given by Persephone. So Psyche is really overfilled with joy. Stage 10. The road back. On the way back to the real world, Psyche can't resist opening the package to acquire a little beauty for herself. The temptation is simply too strong, but when she opens the box, she passes out like she's dead. So, on her way back, Psyche notices her tired appearance and thinks that if she gets even just a little bit of beauty, she will look prettier when reunited with Cupid. But what's actually inside the box is sleep and not beauty. So, as she opens it, she falls to the ground as if she's dead. Stage 11. Resurrection. Gratefully, Cupid comes to the rescue, resuscitates his wife, and promises to make everything right. So after realizing that Psyche could really do everything just to have him back, Cupid just decides to forgive her and reconcile with her. Stage 12. Return with the elixir. Psyche is not really returning anywhere at this point. She is moving somewhere new. Mount Olympus. Psyche receives the ultimate reward in the land of the gods. She's made a goddess and allowed to live happily with Cupid ever after. They even have a daughter, who becomes Pleasure Goddess. Zeus gives Psyche the drink of immortality, also known as ambrosia, which makes her equal to gods and goddesses there in Mount Olympus. And finally, their relationship is made official. And as the story's happy ending, they had a very beautiful daughter named Hedone, the goddess of pleasure. The end. Now let's talk about the story symbolisms. Bluebird. There's this rich guy with a bluebird and he's offering his young wife anything she may like. He has only one requirement. She can't go into their home in a certain space. Sounds like Cupid, right? He has just one requirement for Psyche. While he's away from home, the girl's curiosity wins out and she goes into the forbidden room. Cupid's arrow. The arrow of Cupid is one of the most commonly known symbols in history. He and his arrows rule Valentine's Day, and we all know a person falls immediately, hopelessly in love when Cupid hits his golden bolts. You may say the arrows themselves represent love. Sometimes in novels, Cupid's arrows strike totally out of the blue, and they trigger loads of trouble almost always. This, of course, reflects how seemingly crazy romantic desire can come from nowhere and really interrupt a person's life order. Psyche as the human soul. The whole tale of Cupid and Psyche can be seen as an allegory or symbolic novel for the human soul's struggle to achieve eternal bliss. The word Psyche literally means soul in Greek. When our heroine meets the god of Mount Olympus, Psyche becomes the goddess of the spirit. In any case, you can see how we can come to the conclusion that Psyche is the human soul. Eternal love and happiness. The story is trying to show that all human souls long for eternal love and bliss, but it can only be achieved through struggle and hardships. Perhaps it is these very hardships that make us able to recognize bliss when it comes to us. And now let's talk about the themes of the story. Love. When you have a story in which Cupid, or Eros, the god of love and desire, falls in love himself, you can bet romance will be a major theme. Of course, if Cupid and Psyche just fell in love and everything was instantly happily ever after, there wouldn't be much of a story. Once Psyche displays mistrust of Cupid and gets a glimpse of what he looks like against his wishes, Cupid abandons her, indicating that love cannot survive if there is no trust between two people. However, after determinedly completing a series of tasks, Psyche finally recovers Cupid and finds eternal bliss, perhaps teaching the lesson that only commitment and sacrifice will achieve lasting love. Betrayal. Psyche tells her husband, Cupid, she will never try to see what he looks like. She is expected to please him every night when he comes to her in bed and then go to sleep without ever taking a look at him. Eventually, Psyche's jealous sisters persuade her to have a look at the man she's sleeping with, and so Psyche breaks her word to Cupid. That is a deception on one point. Psyche promises one thing to do and then she does another thing. And is the question of Cupid really reasonable? Is it fine to expect a human to live like this? Psyche's betrayal ultimately results in eternal bliss for both she and her husband. In the end, it seems like the tale of Cupid and Psyche represents a pretty complicated picture of the relationship between love and betrayal. So here are the symbolisms behind the task given to Psyche. For the labor of sorting the seeds, journey of intentionally creating internal order through disciplined action with an aim. We easily imagine the fast movement of the ants working at their aim without destruction and with great speed. It mesmerizes. They can also carry 1,000 times their own weight. In life, we are burdened with our own weight and the weight of society. We successfully carry much less than we potentially can once we take the spiritual journey. The vehicle for this labor is mastery of the body, by which I mean a deep conscious knowing and love for the body to be able to use it artfully. Once known, we are able to carry the weight of our own responsibilities and the tension evoked by engaging the disciplines, as well as the weight that monotony. And the seeds represent birth and childhood, logically sorting things out mentally, and is the teacher or parent. And for the labor of acquiring the golden fleece, it's the journey of developing spiritual discernment for light or darkness, and good or evil. And the vehicle for this labor is the connection with or understanding of the wisdom of nature or natural laws, or read. And the golden fleece represents youth, reckless adventure, and meeting challenges. And the read is intuition or subconscious. This is about the age when many people first become aware of their subconscious mind. And for the labor of acquiring holy water from the crystal urn, it's a journey of making a connection with the soul, the eternal part of ourselves. And the vehicle this time is heavenly, which is Zeus' bird, filling a flask from the water that fills the river Styx, and spiritual development usually occurs in mature adulthood. And for the labor of making the journey to the underworld, the journey of necessary full release from the body with all its illusions, or winning divine love's favor with beauty believed to come from this elixir, the release from the illusions of the world or many snares laid by Venus. So the soul encounters death and falls asleep as if drunk on some sweet elixir. No more pain or feeling of any kind. A lifetime of striving now cease. But unconditional love dwelling in the heart serves to help the mind or soul to transcend and gain victory over death. They enter paradise together, happily ever after. And that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned a lot.